The Dardanelles in Turkey is a narrow stretch of sea, twisting like a river from the Aegean to the Sea of Marmara, the line between Europe and Asia, crossroads of the world. In 1915, the armies of three empires gather to fight another battle here at the Dardanelles. There are coal miners from Durham, footballers from Dublin, Welshmen from deep valleys, and poets from Cambridge. There are Australians from the far side of the world, farmers from New Zealand, Indians, and Frenchmen. There are Turks who are defending their homeland and will never give in.
God of Turks, master of the birds, the sheep, the leaves, the mountains, you have given all this to the Turks. God, all this soldier wants is to keep this land from the British and the French. Grant me this wish.
At dawn, Sunday, April 25th, the British and French land in Turkey. Some land easily. Many are killed on the beaches by Turks who knew they were coming and have been waiting for them. The battle for Gallipoli has begun. The battle aims to capture Turkish forts that guard the Dardanelles. British and French battleships will pass through the Narrows into the Sea of Marmara, capture Istanbul, and knock Turkey out of the war. The invasion lands at 5 beaches around the tip of the Gallipoli Peninsula. 20 kilometers to the north, the Anzacs cling to steep hills above a tiny and crowded beach.
The Anzac landing yesterday morning is chaos. Some of the commanders even want to evacuate this beach. By now, they should be about 6 kilometers inland on a line atop those hills.
The landings were expected. The enemy signaled their intentions long before with the naval assault, but they were stopped at sea and now they were stopped on land. Nowhere they could go inland. Turks fought to the last man.
Isolated parties reached far inland that morning. Most were wiped out. We know where they reached because later, fragments of uniform and discarded equipment were found. Water bottles with bullet holes gave a good indication of where the parties reached, because a water bottle with a bullet hole is useless and is discarded, but at least it shows how far a man got. Before me are human bones. Every year, the winter rains expose more bones. We have no idea whose they are. Frank Parker, the railway worker from Port Melbourne, Australia, has survived the landing.
It was pretty rough, the bodies we saw strewn about the place. There were quite a lot of fellas that took over. Privates, a lot of fellas that had probably had little experience. Well, we eventually made a line of it, and when it come together, I thought they'd done a mighty job to do what they did.
Opposite Frank Parker is Adil Shahin, the 16-year-old farmer from Eceabat, who has also survived the landing.
One part of my company had been wounded, one part had been killed. You couldn't put your head up because there were always bullets flying over. Certainly there were the braver ones in the trenches who wanted to fire their rifles and lifted their heads up. They'd be hit in the head. So many went like this.
Opposing the Anzacs is Colonel Mustafa Kemal. He will show himself a better and more aggressive battlefield commander than anyone else on Gallipoli.
20 kilometres away from Anzac Cove is V Beach. Yesterday, the British ran an old merchant ship full of troops into the beach. Aboard are the soldiers of two Irish regiments, the Royal Dublin and Royal Munster Fusiliers. The first men out are slaughtered as they try to land. The rest wait inside for night to fall. Behind me, the River Clyde is grounded. In front of me is V Beach. The morning after the landing, it's covered in bodies. Up here is the castle of Sedal Bar. The castle and the village behind it must be captured.
My company led the attack with the Dublins, and we had a great time. We saw the enemy, which was the chief thing, and all the men shouted and enjoyed it tremendously, and poured lead into them at 10 yards range.
Sergeant Yahya is 28 years old. He and his men stopped the invaders coming inland. Sergeant Yahya and his men are still here.
Thousands of tons of equipment and tens of thousands of men come ashore to supply an invasion that has ground to a halt. Joe Murray, the Durham coal miner, arrives at W Beach.
Stores to be landed and rations to be carried. We worked like slaves digging holes to sleep in, but we never got a chance to use them. The firing line was not a continuous line, just a series of outposts strung across the toe of the peninsula.
This is where Joe Murray is digging in. If everything had gone to plan, he wouldn't be here at all. He'd be 9 kilometres away on top of a hill. And that's the hill, Achi Baba. It's the reason he and everyone else is here. The British and French landing beaches are supposed to link together, advance and capture the hill of Achi Baba on the first day. This day, they are nowhere near Achi Baba. They are little further than the beaches. This is the top of Achi Baba. The armies want to be up here because they think they can see the forts that guard the Narrows. Remember, the whole point of the campaign is to destroy those forts so that the Navy can come up through the Dardanelles and take Istanbul.
The British and French are wrong. You cannot see all the forts on both sides of the Dardanelles from here. But they don't know this. Come with me, I'll show you something. That village behind me is Kirtia. That's just in between the landing beaches and this hill, Achi Baba. So to capture this hill, first they must capture Kirtia. When they first landed, British troops actually walked into this village, found it deserted, and left. They could have had this village for nothing. But now, it will cost them 50,000 dead and maimed. 50,000 to try to capture a village, and to try to capture a hill that has no use at all.
Ian Hamilton, the commander of the invasion force, knows time is running out. Krithia must be captured before Turkish troops turn the village into a fortress. Hamilton places Major General Hunter Weston in charge of capturing Krithia. Hunter Weston will soon be nicknamed the Butcher.
Only a handful of us managed to cover any ground, and fewer men rose after each rush. We should be somewhere near the top of Achi Baba, but we couldn't see a single Turk, nor any sign of a trench.
6,500 men are killed or wounded. Krithia is not captured. After the battle, Hunter Weston is asked by the commander whose men he has slaughtered. Many casualties? Casualties, he replies. What do I care for casualties?
Joe Murray survives this battle in front of the little village of Krithia.
As the sun rose over the hill, we rejoiced at its coming. In war, you kill and expect to be killed. Every now and then, you are still alive, and you thank God and wonder.
Many battles were fought for this little village of Kirtia. The enemy charged in thousands, and they died for it here. It wasn't only the invaders who slaughtered men here. Turkish command too sent wave after wave of men straight at enemy's machine gun fire. Turkish losses increased day by day, and now reinforcements can't get here because the enemy blocked the Sea of Marmara with submarines.
Over 100 kilometres away, Captain Dacre Stoker, the Dubliner in charge of a submarine, has done the impossible. He has manoeuvred his submarine under the minefields and reached the Sea of Marmara.
A cloud of smoke in the engine room, and down she went. 60, 80, 100 feet. Everything that could fall fell. Knives, forks, plates, men slipping and struggling.
Stoker submarine A2 was attacked by the little Turkish gunboat Sultanhisar. A2 was crippled. She couldn't dive anymore.
I had one last look round, for you see, I was fond of the AE2. An anxious shout from above. "Hurry, sir, she's going down." The water was about 2 feet from the top of the conning tower. She slid away to her last and longest dive.
AE2 lies at 75 meters. And here are the shell holes fired from Sultanhisar. This is the conning tower. And here is the hatch, still open as Stoker left it when he scrambled out in 1915. AE2 is a legend that affected the fate of the Gallipoli campaign.
AE2 proved that the Dardanelles was passable, and more submarines followed her, and they locked up the Turks in the Sea of Marmara.
At Anzac, the situation is unique. Here at Quinn's Post, the Australian and Turkish trenches are just 10 yards apart. The fighting is particularly intense. The Australians have to hang on. They've nowhere to go. There's a sheer drop behind them.
Down on the beach, there's a cottage industry making bombs from empty tins.
At Quinn's, the fuse is lit and thrown the few yards to the Turkish trench.
To break the deadlock, a massive Turkish attack is planned to drive the Anzacs into the sea.
A Turkish military band called Mehter is brought forward.
It started with the morning call to prayer. And then it just went on and on, never stopped. Attack was the command. That was what the general said. Once he says attack, you attack. And you either die or survive. Everybody that could get a rifle on the parapet was in there. We had to, because we knew if they broke through, we'd be driven into the sea.
It was sheer massacre. We lost 10,000 in a couple of hours. And the worst was when 4,000 Turkish soldiers were lying dead on the no man's land. Over there, an Australian stood up and shouted, "Hey, play here again next Saturday."
To cover the open cemetery and collect the wounded, both sides agreed on an armistice. Major Kemal from Ohri is blindfolded and taken down to the beach to negotiate. At the water's edge, 2 men swimming naked carry him around a barbed wire obstacle. A truce is arranged to bury the dead.
My God, you should have seen it. You couldn't step on the ground, it was all bodies.
I don't suppose you'll find 'em all gruesome or sickening sight. There were bloody flies and maggots and God knows what, and these fellas were swelled up like balloons. I think it was the worst part of all, especially when you fluked a mate of yours. God strike me, that was the sickening part.
Recep Trudal meets the men who have invaded his country.
You just moved slowly towards each other. We had a bit of a chat, saying, "They shoot those guns well, don't they? And very hard."
Aubrey Herbert is an interpreter.
A Turkish captain said to me, "At this spectacle, even the most gentle must feel savage, and the most savage must weep." The Australians began coming up and said, "Goodbye, old chap, good luck." And the Turks said, "Gule, gule," which means, smiling may you go, and smiling may you come again.
Gallipoli's a failure. The army are bogged down in front of Krithia and they can't take the village. At Anzac, nothing's moving and nobody's going to get over those hills. The poor planning, the lack of men, the lack of resources, the shoddy medical facilities, it's all beginning to unravel. And Ian Hamilton is confused.
Nothing turns out as we were told it would turn out. At first, the fleet was to force its way through. We were to look on. Next, the fleet and the army were to go for the straits side by side. Today, the whole problem may be fairly restated on a clean sheet of paper.
Out here, there are dozens of ships. No one has actually given very much thought to their protection. But today, a German submarine arrives. Joe Murray is out here as well. He's going for a swim towards the battleship Majestic, and he's in for a surprise.
My intention was to get near enough to scrounge something to eat. I was swimming strongly when I heard a deep thud, and the water seemed to vibrate violently. We now know why the warships and transports have gone. A few days ago there were ships everywhere. Now we feel as though the Navy has deserted us.
On board the Majestic is Ellis Ashmead Bartlett, a journalist for the Daily Telegraph in London. He's seen another battleship being torpedoed, and he reckons the Majestic's next. So he tries to drink all the champagne on the boat before it's too late. Being sunk just makes him angrier. He's already trying to tell the truth about Gallipoli, but Hamilton is blocking his reports.
The battle for Gallipoli is largely the plan of Winston Churchill, First Lord of the Admiralty. He has brought out of retirement Admiral Jackie Fisher. Fisher has been persuaded to support the battle. Each ship lost breaks his heart.
This quick war in Turkey is a disaster. Some members of the War Council now recall that they were always against this idea. Churchill is isolated, and if somebody is going to carry the blame for this looming fiasco, it's going to be Churchill.
The romance between Churchill and Fisher is over. Jackie Fisher walks out of the Admiralty building. "I'm going," he says. "I'm not serving under Churchill."
You are bent on forcing the Dardanelles and nothing will turn you from it. Nothing. I know you so well. Damn the Dardanelles. They will be our grave.
The Prime Minister, Asquith, sends out search parties with a letter. Lord Fisher, in the King's name, I order you to return to your post at once. They find him here at the Charing Cross Hotel. Fisher refuses to return. Over 100 death sentences, though only 3 executions are passed on Gallipoli during the campaign. Many of these are imposed on young men for deserting their posts. But admirals in their mid-70s get to run away and hole up in hotels. It's a sad, tragic end for the brilliant Jackie Fisher, who perhaps cared too much for the fate of his ships and his men. Hamilton now asks Kitchener for more troops, but in his way, politely, tentatively.
If 2 fresh divisions could be spared me, I could push on from this end with good prospects of success.
It is now 10 months since the Dublin footballers gathered at Lansdowne Road. They marched down South Leinster Street to barracks, the best that Dublin city could give, are ready for war. "60,000 fresh troops are dispatched to Gallipoli. Among them, Francis Ledwidge, who now learns the woman who rejected him and married another has just died in childbirth.
A blackbird singing on a moss-upholstered stone. Bluebells swinging, shadows wildly blown. A song in the wood, a ship on the sea. The song was for you, and the ship was for me.
Once a day, if you're lucky, there is bully beef and fly stew as the main meal. In the evening, we have another mug of fly tea and either a piece of slimy fly-covered cheese or share a small tin of apricot jam between the lot of us.
My dad came to see me at Ariburnu. My dad brought halva, yogurt and eggs. Other boys' dads came too. The nearby ones, of course. The ones from around here.
A few days ago, when I was enjoying another bath in a biscuit tin, the Turks had the audacity to make a surprise attack. Now, it's bad enough to be clothed and in one's right mind on these occasions, but to be in one's birthday costume with one's thoughts in Dublin, well then it becomes, to say the least of it, rather awkward.
We had priests in the trenches. They would talk to the soldiers and say, well, this is how God has ordained it. We must preserve our country, protect it. We'd pray 5 times a day. If it coincided with the fighting, of course, the prayers would be put off till later.
Father O'Connor gave absolution to his flock. The bullets of the snipers were whistling overhead and ploughed furrows through the ground as we knelt in prayer and listened to the message of peace and comfort.
My old pal. To see him crawling about, his trousers around his feet, his backside hanging out, all soiled. I don't know what happened. He rolled into this foot-wide trench head first into the slime. We did eventually get him out, but he was dead. He drowned in his own excrement.
Ian Hamilton watches his army dying.
We are on our last legs. The beautiful battalions of April are wasted skeletons now. In some sense, I am disappointed. In another sense, matters might have been very much worse. The enemy, who have had to give up so very much ground, must be dispirited too.
Francis Ledwidge, full of grief at the death of his love and full of ardour for the fight, has arrived at Lemnos. He and the Irish division are loaded onto landing craft and taken straight to battle.
'Tis not for lust of glory, no new throne, this thunder and this lightning of our power. We but war when war serves liberty and keeps a world at peace.
Fresh troops have come to take part in one final battle, to break out, to get Gallipoli moving. This is the hill of Chinook Bear. Hamilton has been thinking about this hill, but he can't come here to see what we can see, because Chinook Bear is still in Turkish hands.
Mustafa Kemal has also been thinking about this hill. For months, he has been urging his commanding officers to come up here and have a look.
The corps commander turned to me and said, "Where will the enemy come from?" Pointing with my hand in the direction of Aribanu and along the whole shore as far as Suvla, I said, "From here." He smiled and patted my shoulder and said, "Don't you worry, he can do it."
Mustafa Kemal has just predicted Ian Hamilton's new battle plan.
Hamilton plans to land 20,000 men at Suvla Bay. They will strike inland and capture the hills around the bay. At Anzac, an attack will strike north and take the hill of Chinook Bear precisely as Mustafa Kemal has predicted. Further south, there will be one more attack to capture the little village of Krithia. The men are launched straight at the village. Joe Murray is watching.
I can see the real cost of the few yards of useless ground wrested from the Turks. I can see the dead lying everywhere. Turks as well as our own lads, lying rotten in the sun.
3,500 men are killed and wounded. Nothing is gained. Nothing at all. While Joe Murray watches through his periscope, the Australians charge Lone Pine. It is the most successful attack at Gallipoli, but it is only a diversion to keep the Turks busy.
The attack at Lone Pine happened in a warren of underground trenches like these, roofed over with pine logs. Australians and Turks fought hand to hand for 3 days, fighting in the darkness. It was brutal, savage, terrifying.
The roof of this dashed posse is intermixed with dead men who were chucked up on the parapet to give the living a chance from the bullets. And a dead man's boot's been dripping grease on my overcoat, and the coat will stink forever. Of all the bastards of places, this is the greatest bastard in the world.
Assembled in the gullies below Chinook Bear are Irish, Welsh, English, Australian, Indians, and men from New Zealand, including a battalion of Maori.
The order has come. We are to move to the forefront of battle. We Maori are now off to strike. Your letter of love has come to me. I am well. I now feel my spirit, my soul, my whole body are not mine.
William Malone prepares to lead his men up Chinook Bear.
We have to wait on the Maori, clearing some hills and trenches over which we have to tackle the high ridge. We shall possibly mistake the Maoris for Turks. If it were not so serious, it would be laughable.
At Suvla Bay, the Dublin pals land.
We ran nicely ashore. The drawbridge worked perfectly and we landed. Behind the stretch of white sand, tufts of grass and thyme, there rose a scrubby foreshore against clay cliffs. rather like the shore at Killiney Bay.
While the Irish land at Suvla Bay, the New Zealand commander Johnson calls a halt to the advance up the hill of Chinook Bear. It will be widely rumoured that Johnson, an alcoholic, is drunk.
At this point, the New Zealanders should be on the top of Chinook Bear. And the plan is for them to come down the hill while the Australians are coming up the hill in support, squeezing the Turks in between. But nothing is running to schedule, and a catastrophe is about to occur at a place called the Neck.
It's dawn at the Neck, a narrow ridge leading to the hill of Chinook Bear. The front is so narrow that only 150 men at a time can charge, and the Turks are perfectly ready and waiting.
The first wave is annihilated. The second wave steps into position. They know they are going to die. Colonel Noel Brazier finds his superior officer to try to halt the third wave.
I reported to Colonel Anthill, who was alone in the dugout with his back to the wall. He ordered me to push on. I replied that it was murder to push on. He simply roared, "Push on." Returning to my position, I said, "I'm sorry, boys. The order is to go."
The men leapt from their trenches and charged towards the Turkish machine guns. 5, 10, 15 yards. It was as far as they got, and most of them are still here. This pleasant little green is the site of the charge. The Australian trenches are pretty much here. The Turkish trenches, pretty much here. The men who died in the charge were buried in a mass grave, here, in this pleasant little green.
The New Zealand commander Johnson finally orders his men up Chinook Bear. They are annihilated. William Malone's men are ordered to follow. Malone steps forward. "Stop where you are," he says. "My men are not going to commit suicide. We will take Chinook Bear, tonight, in the dark, not in daylight." At Suvla Bay, the beaches are crowded with thousands of men.
At my feet lay an enormous dead Turk, looking with open eyes to the sky. A fly walked along his teeth. It seemed incredible that he should not brush it away. I felt strangely exalted. Someone trod on a landmine. And I felt less exalted and rather more frightened.
Down here behind me is Suvla Bay, where one of the more surreal episodes in the Gallipoli campaign occurs. 16,000 men doing nothing, while fewer than 3,000 Turks are defending the area. The man in charge is General Frederick Stopford, who thinks that all he needs to do is to get the men onto the beach. But there's a real opportunity now to push forward, strike out and capture these hills. Hamilton comes ashore to find Stopford and get him to do something. But Hamilton won't insist, and Stopford is too cautious. His men are tired, he says, and the Turks are inclined to be aggressive.
Turkish forces have to march 50 kilometers. 20 hours later, they are here at Suvla, exhausted. Before launching an attack, their commander, Fevzi Bey, gives them a rest. Fevzi Bey is fired. Unlike Hamilton, Liman has no tolerance for tardy officers, and he sends for Mustafa Kemal. The British could have taken all those hills yesterday, but now they have to fight for them.
I was surprised to hear later that General Sir Ian Hamilton came on location and could not have his commands obeyed. and there was much discussion and procrastination amongst the senior officers. This allowed us to win.
Before the battle for Chinook Bear, William Malone writes to his wife.
My sweetheart, you know how I love and have loved you, and we have had many years of great happiness together. If at any time in the past I've seemed absorbed in affairs, it was that I might make proper provision for you and the children. I regret very much now I lost more happiness than I need have done. Forgive also anything unkindly or hard that I may have said or done in the past. My desire for life, so that I may see and be with you again, could not be greater.
William Malone and the Wellingtons take Chinook Bear. The fighting is ferocious. Someone tells Malone he doesn't have to lead bayonet charges. Malone, who's 56, replies, "I'm an old man. You're just a kid. You get out of this." That afternoon, Malone and his men are mistaken for Turks and fired upon. Malone is killed.
Mustafa Kemal has just been down at Suvla, and he has cut the enemy's advance further inland. Now he rushes back here. He hasn't slept for 3 days, but he personally leads the charge that sweeps the invaders of Chinook Bear. Offshore, Hamilton watches helplessly. His army stream down the heights.
We had Chinook Bear in our hands. The Turks are well commanded, that I admit. Their generals knew they were done unless they could quickly knock us off. Never mind. Never say die.
It is too late now to retrieve a fallen dream. Too late to grieve a name unmade, but not too late to thank the gods for what is great. A keen-edged sword, a soldier's heart is greater than a poet's art, and greater than a poet's fame, a little grave that has no name.
With the failure to take Chinook Bear, Suvla Bay becomes a desperate, pointless battle for these hills about me.
In 10 days of fighting, half of the Irish footballers who enlisted at Lansdowne Road have been killed or wounded.
The journalist Ashmead Bartlett, who was annoyed to be sunk on the Majestic, shot the only film ever made at Gallipoli. He's here, and so is Francis Ledwidge.
It is surprising what silly things one thinks of in a big fight. I was pouring lead across a little ridge into the Turks. A man on my right who was hit said, "It can't be far off now." And I began to wonder what it was could not be far off. Then I knew it was death, and I kept repeating the dying man's words. It can't be far off now.
Within a year, there'll be fighting in Dublin, not with the British, but against them. And some of Francis Ledwidge's friends will be executed by men wearing the very same uniform he has. The rebel song, The Foggy Jews, says it all. 'Twas better to die neath an Irish sky than at Suvla or Sed El Bahr.
Ashmead Bartlett now does something courageous no one has yet done. He gets the truth through to London. He writes to the Prime Minister, whose son has been badly wounded here.
Dear Prime Minister, I hope you will excuse the liberty I'm taking in writing to you. Our last great effort to achieve some success was the most ghastly and costly fiasco. We do not hold a single commanding position, and at Helles, Anzac and Suvla Bay, we have not yet gained a single acre of ground of any strategical value. I have no means of knowing how far the real truth of the situation is known in England, or how much the military authorities disclose.
London asks Hamilton whether evacuation is possible. He says it is, but with 50% casualties. Hamilton is removed from command. He writes to his wife, "Coming right home, do not be downhearted, for I know I have given utmost with means given, and I am quite cheerful." She replies, "Overjoyed at your return, you have already done the impossible." The new British commander, General Sir Charles Monro, arrives. He says, like Alice in Wonderland, curious and curiouser. He recommends evacuation. In London, Churchill says of Monro, "He was an officer of quick decision. He came, he saw, he capitulated." Churchill then resigns.
In November, Lord Kitchener, Secretary of State for War, visits Gallipoli.
One morning the captain called to me. Our trenches must be deepened 3 feet, he told me. The men were given a pint of water to shave and got above their buttons had to be polished. Lord Kitchener passed and his cap was just 6 inches below the parapet. What a story to tell my grandchildren. Once upon a time, my young hearers, I fought in the rearguard action when my regiment ran away from Johnny Turk at Galipoli.
In November, the storms arrive.
Where are the faces laughing in the glow of morning years? The lost ones scattered wide. Give me your hand, O brother, let us go, crying about the dark for those who died.
The final irony of the campaign now occurs. The evacuation is accomplished with meticulous planning, imagination, and luck. Instead of the 50% casualties, there are none, not one man. Tons of equipment is set ablaze, hundreds of animals are slaughtered. The armies leave quietly at night.
They still had rifle fire, but there was no one there to fire them. Water was dripped into this tin, and when it was full, it pulled the rock down, which pulled the trigger and fired the shot.
I personally left in my own dugout a bottle of whiskey, and I left a little scrap of paper with it, on which I'd written, "A present for a good Turk." And that's what I left behind in my dugout on Gallipoli.
Adil Shahin has survived since the landing 8 months earlier.
We had no idea they had left. It was early morning, and so all of us went all the way down to the shore. Looked in the trenches and saw too, they were deserted. They'd gone. Well, what could we do? Several people took things that were left in the trenches: biscuits, flour, rice, sugar. I found this badge.
Tamam. Bu şapkalandamış,
Evet.
düşmüş.
Haklısın. Evet.
O da kendini emir almış gelmiş. Biz de emir aldık. Ondan sonra hiç nefret etmedik, hiç.
I imagined all my pals were with me as they had been on the day we landed. We were a motley crowd then, full of hope and anxious to do our best for Britain. The Turks didn't beat us. We were beaten by our own high command.
Joe Murray, the only survivor of his section, one of 15 from 900, is taken straight to the war in France. They called him Lucky Durham. He dies in 1995 at the age of 99. Francis Ledwidge returned to Dublin and the aftermath of the Easter Rising.
If someone were to tell me now that Germans were coming in over our back wall, I wouldn't lift a finger to stop them. They could come.
Within a year, he will be killed on the Western Front, fighting Germans. Winston Churchill was nearly destroyed by Gallipoli. 25 years later, he led Britain through a second Great War. Gallipoli haunted him all his life. Ian Hamilton never held command again. His dignity helped him shoulder more of the blame for Gallipoli than was his share. He died in 1947 at the age of 94. He'd outlived all his generals. Mustafa Kemal became a national hero, president of a Turkish republic. Alec Campbell is a 16-year-old schoolboy from Australia. He lies about his age to enlist in the army. In 2002, aged 103, Alec Campbell dies. He is the last man from the campaign, the last man on earth to have known the battle at Gallipoli.
Gallipoli became a defining moment for the new nations of Australia and New Zealand. It gave them a new and unique identity. It gave them a sense of what they were and what they would become. Gallipoli is a place of creation.
Maybe for the Irish, Gallipoli gave a glimpse of an Ireland that might have been. For a short time, Catholic nationalists and Protestant unionists set aside their differences to fight together. But when it was over, the differences surfaced again. And many had their own reasons to forget that Gallipoli had ever taken place.
Gallipoli created Mustafa Kemal. He would become Atatürk, father of the Turks. And he would create a modern Turkey from this place. Gallipoli is sacrifice, freedom, and honor. Those heroes that shed their blood and lost their lives, you are now lying in the soil of a friendly country. Therefore, rest in peace. There is no difference between the Johnnies and the Mehmets to us, where they lie side by side, here in this country of ours. You, the mothers who sent their sons from faraway countries, wipe away your tears. Your sons are now lying in our bosom and are in peace. Having lost their lives on this land, they have become our sons as well.